Alrighty, welcome back to the series. We are now on part 6, where we will build a second dashboard that shows all the same information, but we're looking at expenses instead of sales. So if you are overly ambitious and an awesome go-getter, and you have already attempted to duplicate this dashboard, but for expenses, kudos to you, you're amazing. You'll be able to follow through and see how I would go about doing it. If not, we'll work through it together so that we can build it side by side. But before we build the expenses dashboard, there's actually a couple things that I want to add here that just once again elevates the look and feel of the dashboard. So the first is I'm going to double click on the title and just bold the title. I always bold the title and I try to keep everything else as unbolded as possible, basically. And then the second thing is I'm going to go back to my dashboard tab over here, and I'm going to use this blank object because I actually want to push the padding out a little bit more for the edge of my dashboard. And the easiest way to actually do that, if you just want to move the overall edge, is to use these blank objects. So I'm going to click and drag until that highlighted bar extends the length of the dashboard. I'm going to drop it, and then I'm just going to make it as small as possible. And I'm going to do the same for the left, the right, and the bottom. And then, of course, I'm going to need to change this to match. And there you go. Once again, it's a minor detail, but in my opinion, it makes such a difference in just the look and feel and aesthetic of the dashboard. Okay, so we can kind of pause here. We can not work on the sales data, but focus now on expenses. Before I do that, though, I'm just going to change the name of this to sales. How would I go about creating a donut expenses dashboard? Well, if I know I want to basically reuse all of these sheets, I'm just going to duplicate. It's that easy. So I'm going to right click on sales and hit duplicate. Okay, sweet. I now have 2 dashboards that are exactly identical and maintained all of the formatting. That's the key thing that I did on my first dashboard. But it's still showing sales. So if I were to go in to, let's actually rename this so we don't get confused. Let's call this expenses. And then let's double click on the title and call this expenses. How do you spell? Hit OK. All right, so yeah, if I were to go into the sheet and then change it from sum of sales to sum of expenses, awesome. Now I'm seeing expenses over here, but I'm also seeing expenses now in my sales dashboard, and that's not good. We don't want that. So I'm going to Control Z until we're back to where we were. Right? I want expenses to show here, but obviously not to show here. So I have to make duplicates of every single one of these sheets, and then I can put them on this dashboard. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go to table, duplicate, bar graph, duplicate, line graph 1, line graph 2. Now I have to go through and change all of the sum of sales to sum of expenses. So I'm going to do that and that. Whoopsies. There we go. So that's my table. Bar graph 2. Change it to, change it to sum of expenses. And don't forget to do it up here as well. Sum of expenses. Line graph 2, same thing. Sum of expenses. Okay, that's changed. Awesome. Line graph. I guess this is line graph 4. Change it to sum of expenses. Okay. So again, I've gone to all of my copied versions and I've made sure that the measure I'm showing is for expenses. And what's awesome is for those that use a tooltip, the tooltip will automatically change it to expenses as well. So I don't have to go in there and make any changes. This naming convention is a little sus, so I'm going to change it to like exp. That way I know that this is for my expenses dashboard. Okay, to better keep track. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to give these a color. So I'm going to change my table. So if I right click on it, hover over color to blue. And I'm going to do that for all of the ones I know are going in my sales dashboard. And for my expenses, I'm going to change it to red because expenses are bad. So I'm using the color red because red often indicates something bad is happening. Okay. I'm going to go to my expenses tab, and now I'm going to basically swap out all of these. So I have my expenses table. I'm going to click and drag it in and delete the old one. And let's do that for every single one. So click and drag my bar graph. Oh boy, this is going to be a little funky because it's in a vertical box. Delete the old one. Line graph 1. I think line graph 1 goes here. Donut sales. Yeah, but it's expenses. Okay, we're good. Delete the old one. Last but not least, delete the old one. Okay. We have our expenses, but unfortunately not every formatting piece has changed. And also you can see that it has brought in these legends that we don't need. So I'm going to exit out of the legends. Yeah, we don't need it. Delete containers. Okay, we're getting a little bit closer. There's a couple misleading things that we want to fix right away, and that's the title. So in our overall sales, we're going to change that to expenses. I'm just going to copy that word, hit OK, and I'm going to do that for every sheet. Okay. There we go. And we can tell that we have the right ones on the right dashboards because our axes has renamed it, right? So we have expenses, 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 and then you can tell if you compare this table to this table, the numbers are different and the color's different. And that's just always good to like keep track of because there have definitely been times where I've accidentally like duplicated a dashboard, made some changes, but I forgot to actually swap out the old sheet with the new sheet. We definitely want the formatting to match. So we're gonna have to make some of the changes that we did in the sales. Now this could be a good time to pause the video and have a go at it on your own to basically have the formatting of the dashboard match the formatting of the sales one. If you don't want to, you can follow me. But one thing I do want you to keep track of is that we're gonna change the color scheme to red because again, expenses, bad. Sales, good. So that's a good way to help audiences once again distinguish between like what they're actually looking at is to have different themes for different measures. So feel free, go ahead on your own if you want to. Otherwise, follow along. So the first thing I'm gonna do is, let's just change the formatting of the dashboard. We're gonna kind of do things backwards. So I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna give all of these sheets a white background again. White background. Boom. Then I'm going to give them a gray border. A border. And here we go. Nice. Then I'm going to increase the inner padding to 10. 10, 10, etc., etc. Sweet. It saved my blank edges, so that's great. And my donut expenses title is already at a 10, so that's great. Okay, if we compare and contrast with the sales, it looks like we have some axis names to get rid of. It also looks like we have a different display unit over here that we need to change. And then lastly, we have to force our labels to stay and change our color scheme. So let's start with our bar graph. I'm gonna go to the sheet. I'm gonna go to label. actually that's not true. Sorry. I'm going to click on sum expenses and click format. Then we're going to go to number, currency, display units to millions. Hopefully that's familiar since we have done that before in the sales. Awesome. There is the display units and it is sorted correctly, right? It's still in descending order. It could have been that glazed had more expenses than chocolate. We didn't know, but it stayed in the same order. So that made things easy. Okay, next, let's move to the right. This is in a currency, and we have a different shading color scheme. So let's make those two changes. I'm going to go to the sheet. If you haven't already, you're going to click on, again, sum of expenses and formatting, but it kind of saved from the last thing we did, so I don't have to do that. Click on numbers, click on custom, and uncheck decimal places. Sweet. Next, we're going to click on color, edit colors, change it from automatic to blue, and hit apply. Okay, sweet. So it matches. Nice, that's looking great. Next, we have to force our labels to always show. So I'm going to right click, hover over mark label. Let's do the same for chocolate, because you never know. Actually, oopsies, I clicked the wrong one. There we go. Always show. It's actually in a pretty good spot. And then eek, gonna click, right click on glazed, mark label, always show, and move it below. And I'm gonna do the same for these. Krispy Kreme, right click, Dunkin', and just make sure that this is always on always show and not on automatic. Okay, let's see how we're looking. Yeah, so far so good. Ooh, I'm gonna move this up. I don't like where that is. There we go. Yeah, we're looking good. Okay, we're getting pretty close. So next, I'm gonna get rid of some redundancies, which is the axes. So I'm gonna click edit axis after I right click and delete. I'm just gonna go through the process of doing that for everything that in my mind is redundant. And again, it's totally up to you. This is a preference-based thing. This is not anything beyond that. Okay, the other thing is that I remembered is to actually just get rid of this axis entirely. So I'm gonna right click and uncheck the show header. Nice. Okay, see how quick that was? I mean, just duplicating it and then running through really quickly all of those formatting steps, and you already have a donut expenses sheet. Now, it's not in red. And I highly recommend that you do change the color. Now, it doesn't need to be red. It can be whatever color you want, but since we are using identical bar graphs, tables, line graphs, and line graphs to show two different fields, two different measures, it can be really confusing for people to switch between sales and expenses and like actually believe that they're on a different dashboard. So we want to make it obvious that when they're looking between these two dashboards, that they're actually looking at two different measures. Color can help with that. I chose red. Feel free to choose whatever you want. So now we actually got to go back in here and change the color. So I'm in expenses. I'm going to go to color, edit color, and change it to red. Assign the palette and just double check that chocolate is sort of that medium color and glazed is that pink color. Okay, here we go. Ah, sweet. It's changed both the bar graph and the line graph. But wait, oh no. It's done the same in our sales, which is not what we want. Why did it do that? That's because we're using the exact same structure and the exact same categorical variable between these two graphs. That's not good. So what we need actually is a identical donut type color variable to use for our expenses, so we have two different palettes. So I'm going to click Control Z until it's back to, I'm going to go back to our donut expenses sheet. And then I'm gonna hover over the donut type pill. I'm gonna right click and hit duplicate. Aha, now I have my copy. You can leave it as is. I like to rename it. So I'm gonna click on the downward arrow, hit rename, and just do expenses. That way everything's matching. Now I'm gonna click and drag that, hover over the donut type in the color marks card. And now I can go through that process of turning it red. Oops, that didn't save, my bad. I did not apply. Okay, so there's old fashioned, chocolate needs to be here, glaze needs to be here, and we're gonna assign. And hit okay. Now, when I go to expenses and sales, the colors have basically stayed where I want them to stay. Cool. So now we go into the line graphs and we change it from this donut type to this donut type. Ta-da! It's that easy. Oopsies. Sorry. For company, we just have to do the same thing. So we duplicate the company, rename it. This is going to be for expenses. Voila, it has now changed. So I can click on color, edit colors, red. I'm gonna assign the palette, make sure that Dunkin' is the darkest, Krispy Kreme is the middle, and Top Pot is, well, let's do that one, is the lightest. There we go. Let's see how we're looking. Okay, so far so good. But changing the color has taken away our marks labels. Tableau, that's okay. We can just really quickly and easily remark them. This is what I mean when I say that when you're working with Tableau, formatting can take the longest. Luckily, I love formatting because it just makes everything, oopsies, look so much better. So it's always worth the extra time to change your dashboards from default to something that looks professional and pretty. Last but not least, let's do that table. Okay, sum of expenses. So this one's actually, it is a different variable. So we just need to change the scheme. So click on color, edit colors, red, hit apply. And there you have it. We've got sales, that's all blue. Expenses, that's all red. The last thing we need to change is the title. If you double click on it, highlight, hit the downward arrow. You can hover over like one of these red ones that's already popped up for you if it has, or you can click on more colors, pick screen color, and choose the darkest one. Great. All right. You have made 2 dashboards. I mean, that's awesome. That look really professional and pretty, in my opinion. But we're not done. There's still a few more things that we can do to elevate this dashboard and help users get a good grasp on the data, what's going on with the data. So in our next video, I'm gonna walk through what's called a dashboard action. I'm gonna walk through a filter, and then the last thing we're gonna do is adding a navigation button. Okay. Well done. Congrats to you for making it this far. I will see you in the next video.